As they complete that work, we will go ahead and begin with the other items that we want to be sure to share with you. We want to be as careful with your time and as generous as we can be, getting us out perhaps a little bit early if possible. We do have a few things that need to occur tonight. My name is Gary Graves. I'm the Secretary of the General Conference. Woo-hoo. Thank you. Those must be the folks who've been sharing in the 70,000 emails that have been going across my desk in the last 2 days. Thank you for all of your support and all of the kind words that you've had for our staff as we have adjusted to life in a professional football stadium, utilizing spaces that were never meant to host legislative assemblies, I can be assured. It is a wonderful thing to watch the church when it is cooperative, loving, flexible, and caring, and those are the only things I'm watching for right now. So thank you as you are sharing those with one another and with us as we are settling in. We do want to share with you a few pieces of information that will help you adjust as we are moving through the special pieces of a 3-day special session of the General Conference. Our normal systems are built for an approximate 10-day session and 10-day process, and so the Commission on General Conference has worked diligently to be as adaptable as possible within the constraints that bind us all, those things that we have said we will honor and that we will live within the rules. One of the things that we are going to be doing that is a bit different this time around, you have perhaps been reading all of the releases and the explanations. The Commission on General Conference is given the task of assigning the number of legislative committees, and for the special session, we will be meeting in one legislative committee. You are currently seated in the plenary hall. You will also be seated at the same place for the legislative committee time. We will be processing the pieces of legislation through the legislative committee as we normally would. We will have the officers who will be elected will be the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary as normal, and they will guide us through the legislative process. Paragraph 507, points 10 and 11, which were enacted by the 2016 General Conference, indicate that all petitions which are submitted to a legislative committee must be voted upon by the legislative committee. It also says anything which receives a favorable vote in the legislative committee and is moved forward to the plenary session must receive a vote in the plenary session. We will be observing both of those requirements. In order to move us through the process as quickly as possible and to begin to see what direction the General Conference might be moving, the Commission on General Conference has devised the prioritization plan for the items that are before the Legislative Committee. Rule 36.1 in our Plan of Organization and Rules of Order give the option to the General Conference body to give direction to the legislative committees in prioritizing the work that is before them. The Commission on General Conference is bringing the plan to you to enact that portion of Rule 36.1 to enable you as the General Conference full plenary body to give direction about the prioritization of the work that is before us. We will be guided through those steps and be reminded of a few pieces about them as we are learning about the speaker recognition and voting device system. The prioritization plan allows for you to set the priorities that would be followed during the legislative committee time. In absence of your choice to do that, it would be up to the 3 officers to set the priorities for the full body. It seemed most equitable to let you have that opportunity to weigh in on setting those priorities. We have been impacted in that process by a recent Judicial Council decision, which now says that anything related to the central conferences, rather than just being reviewed by the standing committee, and if they would like to give any opinion to a legislative committee to which a petition has been assigned, the standing committee will now receive those petitions which had already been assigned to the legislative committee. All of our petitions had been assigned to the legislative committee. All meaning 78. For the 78 petitions are the 48 petitions contained in the report from the Commission on a Way Forward, and the 30 petitions which were deemed to be in harmony by the Committee on Reference. The Committee on Reference meeting earlier this year deemed that 20 of the submitted petitions were not in harmony with the purpose as stated in the call. They also found that one petition was invalid. And so that leaves us with 78 pieces of legislation. The Judicial Council decision, which now says that all items must go to the Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters, means that that body will be convening and will be bringing legislative reports back to the plenary body. We will be having an announcement later about the time of that, but we do want you to know that those items will be considered by the Standing Committee and not by the one legislative committee. The numbers of those items will be reported in the Daily Christian Advocate as soon as the Committee on Reference has determined the final number which must be reassigned. That process is ongoing. We will be reporting to you each step of the way so that you will know exactly what steps will be followed. As we meet in legislative committee and as we meet in plenary session, we have a process by which we remind ourselves of the importance of the way that we handle ourselves, the way we speak with one another, the way the body is moving, and it is through our monitoring process. The monitoring process is guided for us by the General Commission on the Status and Role of Women and the General Commission on Religion and Race. Bishop Tracy Smith Malone is going to come and share with us a few items about that process and perhaps a few other things.
I want to thank you on behalf of the General Commission on the Status and the Role of Women, the General Commission on Religion and Race, and every member of the United Methodist Church for your time, dedication, preparation, and your willingness to serve as a delegate to this special session of General Conference. The General Commission on the Status and the Role of Women and the General Commission on Religion and Race have responsibilities during this General Conference, many of which are mandated in the Book of Discipline. Both the General Commission on the Status and the Role of Women and the General Commission on Religion and Race will be monitoring during this General Conference, each with a different focus to help us on our journey as we seek to live into beloved community, and we will be reporting learnings back to you. You will note that each of these agencies has a report in your pre-General Conference Advanced Daily Christian Advocate. At this time, I would like to invite those persons who will be serving as monitors representing the General Commission on the Status and the Role of Women and the General Commission on Religion and Race. If you are in the area, whether on the concourse or on the floor, if you would stand at this time that we might recognize you. Amen. The General Commission on the Status and the Role of Women, GCOSRO, has the responsibility of monitoring for gender inclusion and for reporting those findings back to the church. These women and men will be observing the persons who are called upon to speak, the manner in which speakers address and show respect for one another, and reporting their findings to the legislative chair, to the presiding bishops, and to the members of this body through daily reports in the Daily Christian Advocate. They may also be called upon by the presiding bishops to give interim reports. You will want to especially note that 36% of the delegates who are here serving as delegates for the special session are women. 36% of the delegates are women, while there are over 57% of our membership in the United Methodist Church that are women. We are all going to have to work hard and be intentional to make sure that women's voices are heard. As an additional component to this monitoring, the General Commission on Religion and Race, GCOR, will be continuing with a practice that had begun in 2016. You will be given an opportunity to be self-aware of your own behavior, as well as to report what you are observing. From time to time during this general conference, a representative, at the direction of the presiding bishop, will ask a thoughtful, self-reflective question that you will have the opportunity to answer. You will respond to that question when that time comes by using your voting devices, and the results will be shared on the screens once those votes are taken. The Board of Directors of GCOSRO and GCOR are in prayer, and we are praying and hopeful that the monitoring tools and reports will help each of us be more aware of our conduct towards one another, and also in our intentionality in including all voices equitably in all discussions. In the final DCA of the General Conference 2016 report, GCOSRO noted several areas where we could begin our focus of improving our language and behavior. And let me just take a few moments to share a few of these with you. Number one, be intentionally conscious of your language. When referring to clergy and referring to God, too often they were referred to as he. The United Methodist Church has a proud heritage of ordaining women. And the Bible has many metaphors and names for God. Be mindful of persons for whom English is not their first language. We ask that you allow time for the interpreters to properly translate what all persons say. The interpreters have shared that just breathing between sentences gives them the time that they need to translate. You are asked, all of us are asked, to show respect for our fellow delegates by wearing your interpretation devices, and when they are speaking, that we are listening. Hold yourselves to the highest of godly and ethical behavior. Do no harm, do good, and stay in love with God. Only vote on your own device. Do not bully or harass others whose opinion is different from your own. Be kind to everyone. Friends, we are all beloved children of God. Let the church say amen. Finally, should you have a complaint, whether you have been or whether you have observed someone else being a victim of sexual harassment or sexual misconduct or any form of harassment, you should report the incident to the secretary of General Conference. I close these words with this excerpt from a sermon by Archbishop William Temple. And it reads, "God reigns. While we deliberate, God reigns. When we decide wisely, God reigns. When we decide foolishly, God reigns. When we serve God in humble loyalty, God reigns. When we serve God self-assertively, God reigns. When we rebel and seek to withhold our service, God reigns. The Alpha and the Omega, which is and which was and which is to come, the Almighty, God reigns. May the Lord thy God, may God's Spirit reign among us over these next few days. Amen.
Thank you, Bishop Malone. It is always good to be reminded that God reigns at all times, in all situations. If you would turn now to page 274 of Volume 2, Number 1 of the Daily Christian Advocate. That is the Saturday, February 23rd, 2019 edition. You are invited there to follow along as we discuss probably what is the absolutely most exciting thing in your entire day, parliamentary processes. Woohoo! That's right. It was a motion of the 2016 General Conference for the Commission on General Conference and the Secretary of the General Conference to explore the possibility of bringing a professional parliamentarian to bring advice to our deliberative process. The Council of Bishops has engaged the services of a professional parliamentarian, Dr. Leonard Young, as they have been doing some work in professional development in the areas of presiding and parliamentary procedure. We have engaged the services of Dr. Young to serve as the parliamentarian of the 2019 special session of the General Conference, and so I would like to give you a few words of introduction about Len. Dr. Leonard Young is a professional registered parliamentarian and has been registered for 35 years and is a past president of the National Association of Parliamentarians. He has been working with our bishops to prepare them to preside at this General Conference and in the annual conferences which they oversee. He believes deeply that parliamentary processes should bring unity, peace, and good fellowship among people of faith, and is here to speak now to our delegates and to the observers about the procedures to be used at this conference. Dr. Young, please come.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters in Christ. It is good to be here for me. I'm not a member of the United Methodist Church, but I'm a person of faith. And I actually have 7 different denominations now that I work with. In the National Parliamentarians Association, people refer to me as the church parliamentarian. I'd be amiss if I didn't tell you that there are a lot of parliamentarians who don't want to work with churches. I don't find that to be so. In conferences that I work with, I find everyone wants the best for their church. They're passionate about what they believe, but they want good fellowship, peace, and harmony to prevail, and I'm sure that will happen here as well. I appreciate the words Gary said very much. I enjoy working with him very much. And he made note of page 274. It actually runs through page 278. You probably don't have to follow every word there. There will be several places that I ask you to turn to a particular thing. Christian confer. Sorry, I left my. If we could have the PowerPoint up on the screen now, there we go. And I'm going to advance the slide there. Very good. You know, there is a theology of conferring. And I'd just like to draw your attention to 3 scriptural passages. In 1 Corinthians 14:33, "For God is not a God of disorder, but of peace, as in all the congregations of the saints." And in Colossians 2, verse 5, "For though I am absent from you in body, I am present with you in spirit and delight to see how orderly you are and how firm your faith in Christ is." And maybe the most obvious from 1 Corinthians, "But all things should be done decently and in order." We need to take these seriously this week. Now, every time I get introduced to a delegate and they find out I'm the parliamentarian, I usually get this reaction at this meeting. "Oh," or "Oh my God, I'm going to pray for you." Folks, this does not have to be like those 2 bulls that you may have seen up the street. It does not have to be a contest of wills. If we listen carefully to each other and pray for one another as we did in that beautiful communion service. So, parliamentary law is based on 5 things. It's based on concern for the right of the majority, which is usually taken care of by a majority vote, of the minority, especially a strong minority, greater than 1/3. That's why sometimes we have 2/3 votes. Of individual members, of absentees who are not here, and of all of those things taken together. That's a quote right from General Robert. Well, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. When you think about making motions, you'll see there's a page that's a chart of motions in there. We couldn't possibly put into the system every motion that anybody could make. That would have been a very long list. We were limited to 8. But motions have rank among themselves. A motion takes precedence over another if that motion can be moved while the other one is already on the floor. So if there's a main motion on the floor and you want to make an amendment, of course, an amendment takes precedence over a main question. It's in order while the main question is being considered. Likewise, the motion to refer has higher precedence than amendments. And there's a whole list of those, and I'm going to show them to you in a minute. The point is, the rank between motions is very important. Because if you wish to make something that's a lower rank, when a higher ranking motion is pending, it will not be in order to do that. Now, in your rules of order, there's a ranking in there of all of those rules. I advise you to look carefully at it. Let me briefly point out in this chart, the main motion is the lowest ranking motion. It requires a second, it's amendable, it's debatable, it takes a majority vote, it cannot interrupt a speaker, and it can be reconsidered. See how the chart works? The next ranking motion, I'm going to list them all for you, is postpone indefinitely. We'll come back to each one of these. And just look up that chart and see where the various motions that you might use are in relation to others. Above these subsidiary motions, which are here, that help us to treat or dispose of a main question, there are also privileged motions. There are 5 of them listed there. Call for the orders of the day, question of privilege, recess, adjourn, and fix the time to which to adjourn. Those are pretty much always in order because they have such high rank that they can get in when a lot of other things are already pending. So let's say a few words about subsidiary motions, one at a time. These are the motions that help us treat or dispose of the main question. I'm going to skip, I'm saying this for the guys in the truck, to the next slide, because I put one out of order, I see. The lowest ranking motion is the motion to postpone indefinitely. Its effect is to kill a motion without a direct vote on it. Now, I know from reading the exhaustive transcripts of your last 2 general conferences that many of you try to use the motion to table when what you really mean is this. This is a very low-ranking motion and can only be made when the only thing pending is a main question. If you try to table something and you're trying to do this, the chair's not going to allow that. Now, we'll come back to that when we get to table, and you'll see why. The way you say it is, I move that the question be postponed indefinitely. Now, they may go on with amendments and other things that are higher ranking, but eventually they'll get back to that question. It requires a majority vote. It can be used to extend debate time, because you can debate it, and debate can go fully into the merits of the main question. And it can be used to test the opponent's strength. If you're against a motion, you got nothing to lose by postponing it indefinitely, do you? So if you move that, and that is voted down, you know how many votes you have to change. It's kind of a very interesting parliamentary process. Now, I'm going to go back. I'm going to hit the red button here, guys, and go back to the first slide on amend. Back up. Yeah, thank you. Just leave that just like that. Amendments, just like main motions, they're the next higher ranking motion, require a second, are amendable, are debatable, and require a majority vote. An amendment should always be made so that you state exactly what you wish to change in the main question. Now, there's only 3 ways. I'm going to skip over now, guys, the postpone indefinitely slide and go, back to amend. It always has to be handled before the main question is, because we have to know what form the main question is going to be in before we put it to vote. So amendments are higher ranking. Now, let's talk about an issue that's going to come up a lot in this conference. First, I want to quote from the 11th edition of Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, which is your parliamentary authority. Folks, this is the floor, not the ceiling. Your rules are the ceiling. Roberts applies when nothing else applies. But let me read this to you. A set of amendments are considered as conforming amendments where all of the individual amendments must be made if any one of them is made in order to leave a coherent resolution pending if the motion to amend is adopted. Now, that is very similar to a provision of your book of discipline, which I'm now going to go to. Let's read it. This is Rule 507. If the discipline is affected, each petition must address only one paragraph of the discipline, except that if 2 or more paragraphs in the discipline are so closely related that a change in one affects the others, the petition may call for the amendment of those paragraphs also to make them consistent. You're going to be considering plans which have a whole bunch of petitions in them that hang together. That's why I'm pointing this issue of conforming amendments out to you. Let's take a look at Rule 28. When a resolution or committee report is properly before the conference for consideration and action, even if amendments are pending, a substitute may be offered by any delegate moving that the same be substituted for the report, resolution, or amendment under consideration. The substitute shall be an alternative to what is before the body and not simply a negation of the main motion. Just one more thing and then we'll talk about it. Debate on the motion to substitute in your rules is limited only to the question of substitution. Now, I will admit to you, it's kind of hard to draw the line between when debate is running into the merits of the main question and when the debate is really just about, should this one substitute for that one and here's why. That's what you need to say when you're speaking to a substitute. This one is preferred to that one for the following reasons. That will harmonize with your rules. I would rather suspect that in the committee and in the plenary on Tuesday, we'll be considering a plan which has a bunch of petitions in it. And someone will move to substitute Plan X for Plan Y. All right, we'll follow this procedure. If we decide not to make the substitute, that one has received the vote which is required in your rules, and it is rejected. If it is substituted, the other one is rejected. Hope that makes sense to you. We may come back to that again. That's also true of petitions. Now, Gary mentioned the rules that each plan or petition must get a vote in the committee and in the plenary. And as I just said, if a plan or petition is pending and you attempt to substitute another one for it and that issue does not prevail, that other one has had its vote and is rejected. You may want to keep that in mind because sometimes it's not the wisest thing to do to try to substitute one for the other. The rules say here, I can get to, yeah, there we go. At least 2 speeches have to be for and against before you can move the previous question on a substitute. And that after 3 speeches, we automatically take a vote if there's no other amendments or other subsidiary motions pending. Now, that's all I want to say about substitute. Let's talk about the motion to refer. If you want to refer something, you want to send it to a committee to do some further work on it and to report back. The only way to get a petition over from this conference to next year's conference is to refer it to a body and ask them to report at the next conference. You cannot postpone something beyond the end of this conference. You can post it from the morning to the afternoon, okay, but referring is the way, so whatever body you send it to, they think about it, they may change the form, and they come back and make a report at the next conference. To send a pending motion to a committee, you have to be careful to be sure that it's in the best form it is. If you make a motion to refer, you must say to whom you wish to refer it. And I don't mean by an individual, but a group. Say you want to refer to the Council of Bishops or the Commission on the General Conference. I don't know. We're going to need to know that. If you don't say that, the chair will ask you. The form is, I move to refer the motion to the Finance Committee. I just made that one up. It takes a majority vote, and it's debatable. But hear this, debate can only extend to the desirability of referring or committing the main question. It's not about the merits of the question. It's should it be referred and why should it be referred? The chair will be watching those kinds of things very carefully, and debate will only be in order that follows the rules. All right, let's go to limit debate. That's simply to change the limits on debate, the length of speeches, the number of speeches, all of those kinds of things. I move to limit debate on this motion to 10 minutes, or I move to limit debate on this motion to the next 4 speakers. Those are examples. To refer the motion to another body requires a majority vote. Oh, let's go back one. Sorry, hit the button too soon. Limit debate is, you know that list I referred to of motions that are in those last pages of today's? It's actually on the last page. There's a quick reference cheat sheet. Refer and limit debate are going to fall under number 10. Other. We could only have 8 items, so we put the 8 most common items on there. Limit debate would also be number 10. Let's go to postpone to a definite time. Remember I said earlier, you can't postpone anything beyond the end of the conference. What the rule is you can postpone anything if you meet as often as quarterly. Well, annual is not quarterly. So you can only postpone it to the end of this session of the conference. That is, by the end of the day, Tuesday. You have a special rule that says you can postpone something by a majority vote. Forget the 2/3 there. That's a mistake. And you say, I move to postpone the motion to the next meeting. That is, from the morning to the afternoon. Better to say, I move to postpone it until 2 o'clock. It's going to take a majority vote to do that. The only way for a future conference to consider the matter before this conference, without it being introduced as a whole new petition, is for it to be referred to a committee with instructions to report. I hope that's clear. All right, let's talk about everybody's favorite motion, the motion to close debate. You know, I always love to watch in the assembly. I think, you know, in a baseball team, they have a designated hitter if you're in the American League. I know that won't make any sense to folks not from the U.S., but somebody who comes in automatically and bats for someone else. I'll watch in the assembly, and I guarantee you there's a couple of dozen designated previous question people in this assembly who are going to move that as often as they can. I would urge you not to be too impatient. Let the assembly have its 3 speeches for and against. And then if there's a subsidiary motion pending, we'll have 3 speeches for and against on that. But you have the right to move that any pending motion be closed, that debate on it be closed, and that we take an immediate vote. Now, we're taking away people's rights here, folks. So what vote is it going to take? See, I think you know this. It's a 2/3 vote. But it cannot be moved until there have been at least 2 speeches for and against. And after 3 speeches for and against, if no subsidiary motion or secondary motion is pending, the question is automatically put. That's Rule 7. And the maker has to specify which motions it applies to if there's more than one. So let's suppose this. There's a main motion before you to buy a nicer desk and chair for the secretary. And somebody moves to insert the words brown leather before the word chair. Now, if you want to move the previous question, you can move it on the immediately pending question, which is what? The amendment. Or you can move it on the whole pile. But you have to say what it is you want to move it on. If you don't say, it's only the immediately pending question. The chair may actually prompt you and say, do you mean to move this on the immediately pending question or on the whole matter? If you forget to do that, and you get to specify. And it takes a 2/3 vote. Let's go to the motion to table. Now, everybody else in the world but you calls this lay on the table, but okay, I'm not going to make a man an offender for a word, or a woman either. The motion to table is to temporarily, that's the key word, folks, temporarily set aside pending business because something more urgent came up. You say, I move to table the question. Now, if there's a series of questions pending, you have to table all of them. They're stuck together. You can't just table the primary amendment, let's say. Now, I'm going to show you a picture in just a moment that will make you forever remember the right way to do a table. It's not in order unless something more urgent has come up. It cannot be used to kill a motion without a direct vote on it. It has to be used in this manner. Now, here's your picture. Have you ever watched the British House of Commons on television? Notice that they sit in two-tiered rows facing each other across a very big table. That table is 1 sword length plus a foot wide. Comes from the old days when people carried sidearms with them. And they speak across the table. Before copy machines and printers and computers and typewriters, the only person that had the bill was the speaker. Seeing that guy sitting at the end there with the big wig on? Maybe it's hard to see him, but he's there. And he would read from the bill as necessary. Now let's suppose that the Prime Minister suddenly appeared with an important speech to make. Any member might notice this and say, the Prime Minister is here, I move that we lay the pending matter on the table. And if that got a majority vote, and it's not debatable, it's not amendable, majority vote, you know what the Speaker would do? He'd roll up the scroll and he'd lay it on the end of that very big table. And there it sat in plain view until the interruption was over and someone would say, I move that we take from the table, and they take it up again. This is very important because I've read your transcripts and I understand you don't understand that this way. But, you know, the first one or two that try that are going to get a little bit of a lecture from the presiding officer. Table a motion is to temporarily set it aside. Now, if the Queen of England was going to come and speak to us at 2 o'clock, we would table whatever we're doing because it would be impolite to make our guest wait. But other than something like this, the motion to table is simply not in order. Because what you want to do is postpone indefinitely a very low-ranking motion by using a very high-ranking motion. And the chair cannot admit that as being in order. All right, let's go to the privileged motions. Unlike subsidiary motions, privileged motions relate not to the pending business, but they have to do with some immediate overriding importance. You know, we've been sitting an awful long time and we want a break. Now, your rules actually give to the presiding officer the authority to declare breaks, recesses. So you don't need to do that. They'll be doing that for you at appropriate times. If you don't think it's appropriate enough, send a note up that, you know, we need to go to the bathroom, please. Okay? And if you have to leave the assembly hall for a moment while proceedings are going on, we're going to miss you. But we're not going to stop proceedings just because you need to go to the bathroom. Go, come back as quick as you can. There'll probably be less of a line that way, too. The other one I want to mention is the motion to adjourn, which means to close the meeting or to close the whole session. I move to adjourn. It has to be unqualified in order to be privileged. You can't say, I move to adjourn at 2:30. That's now an incidental main motion. It's not the privileged motion to adjourn, and can only be made, if it's not privileged, when nothing else is pending, like any other main motion. All right, that's all I want to say about that, but there are a couple of incidental motions we should talk about. Incidental motions are not directly related to the business, but they can interrupt business generally. The first and maybe most important is the point of order. Now, brothers and sisters, we need to talk. Because I've been reading your transcripts. Lord Jesus, help me. I saw at the last convention 1 or 2 points of order that were correctly done, and a whole bunch that were just misused to try to get a speech in by interrupting. Well, I'm telling you, and I don't mean to be mean at all about this, that's simply not going to be allowed. The presiders have a very detailed script, and they are going to ask you to give what the rules say. Let's just take a look here. Delegate who raises must first cite the rule. So you better be flipping around in the book and know that it's Rule 36 or Rule 4 or something else that you're going to suspend. And then a point of order is you're just drawing to the chair's attention that there's a rule that's been broken. If there's no rule broken, there's no point to have a point of order. Once a member has risen and been recognized for the point of order, he or she immediately indicates what rule it is and what the problem is. You don't get to make a speech about anything. You don't get to prelude your thing by saying, well, you need to understand this and that. No. What's the citation and what's the problem? Okay? And the chair's going to be kind to you, but if you don't do that immediately, they're going to interrupt you. And they're going to say, you were recognized to offer a point of order. The purpose of the point of order is to call to the chair's attention that a violation of the rules of the assembly is or has just taken place. Can you please state for the chair what the violation of the rules is, as you know, what you're requesting the chair to do to fix it? If the delegate does not immediately do that, the chair is going to interrupt and say, what rule is being violated? Please be specific. If the person still continues incorrectly, the chair is going to say, I'm sorry, but you have not raised a proper point of order. Please take your seat. And that's just simply going to be the way that it is. And that's because we've got to be fair to everybody else who's playing by the right rules. Okay? We don't mean to be harsh about that, but this is the single biggest thing I saw in your past conventions that was really problematic. Get the floor and make your speech, but don't try to make a point of order. That's not a real point of order. Now, if you do have a real point of order, and if the chair rules that your point is incorrect, that's the way they'll say it. Your point's either correct or incorrect. If they say it's correct, you're happy, right? And they'll fix whatever's wrong. If the chair disagrees with your point of order and says it's not correct, you have the right to appeal the decision of the chair from the chair to whom? To me? No, to you. To the assembly, to the plenary or the committee, whatever it is. Now, in the General Conference rules, it says if an appeal is debatable, only the presiding officer who speaks first and the person appealing may speak. Nobody else gets to speak. So the presiding officer is going to explain why she ruled that way, and the delegate is going to say why he raised the point of order and disagree with the chair. And then it will be put to vote. And it will be done this way. If you agree with the ruling of the chair, you will press 1. If you disagree with the ruling of the chair, you will press 2. It will take a majority who disagree to overturn the chair's decision. A tie vote, which I would be real surprised with this many delegates you'd ever get, but a tie vote sustains the chair because no negative majority has been achieved. Okay? Say a few more words about appeal. Appeal is not debatable except for what I said. Now, some appeals are not debatable at all. I've listed them for you. If it relates to indecorum or transgression of the rules of speaking. Indecorum means you're calling others bad names, you're screaming, you're physically yourself out of order. The chair's going to deal with that. You don't even need to raise a point of order about it. Well, number 2, related to the priority of business. You claim this ought to come before that. There's no debate. We just take a vote and agree. Or it's made while an undebatable question is immediately pending. Because obviously you wouldn't want to debate the point of order since you can't debate the business out of which it came. Now, don't feel like you have to memorize these rules. They will be very gracious in helping you, if you need it. I suggest you talk to your delegation chief before you pop off with a rule of order, a point of order. And make sure there's not just you who thinks something's wrong here. Check your perception. It's important to know that points of order must be raised at the time the infraction occurs, not after business has progressed. One more thing. We're being orally interpreted, and tomorrow everybody will have headphones on. Now, this is a little bit playing in the cracks, but I need you to hear me. Normally, you can interrupt anything, anytime with a point of order. The chair will see that the point of order's popped up. But you know what? Your point of order can wait 3 minutes. Unless it's about the person's speech, in which case the chair is going to take care of that. Trust me. But if you have a point of order that's not about the speech the person's giving, you should wait and enter it between speeches. Or go ahead and enter it, but you're not going to be called on. Now, I'll tell you why. The oral interpreters have said very clearly to us, when they're interpreting, now that's a gift from God, don't you agree, to be able to orally interpret like that? We're thankful for them. But they're interpreting, and they're going down a line of explanation here, and suddenly, bam, this point of order interrupts. Now they have to stop the speech and go over and explain that, then come back, and the whole train of thought is lost on the delegates who don't speak the language you are speaking. Because it can happen to you when somebody's speaking in French or some other language. If you're speaking English, whatever language your is. So be kind here. And try to be careful and understand that it isn't going to kill you to wait 3 minutes to get your point of order recognized. And if it's particularly about the speaker being out of order, he's not speaking to the subject, she is saying things not appropriate to be said, that person is personally out of order, the chair will take care of that. All right, let's go to suspend the rules. I keep my ear to the ground. I hear stuff. People out there are talking about suspending rules. Well, okay, let's talk about it. When you wish to do something that you cannot do under the ordinary rules, you move to suspend the rules that would interfere with it. Yeah. Provided that the proposal is not in conflict with the Constitution or the fundamental principles of parliamentary law, you can suspend it. Now, the Constitution is easy. We know what's in the Constitution. But I doubt you know what the fundamental principles of parliamentary law are. So I'm going to give you an example here. You know that absentee voting in your rules is not permitted, right? You can't suspend the rules to allow it. Because the fundamental principle, one person, one vote, and you got to be present. That's a fundamental principle of parliamentary law. Now, a suspension of the rules is not debatable and requires a 2/3 vote. You don't get to make a speech to say why you want the rules. You say, I move to suspend Rule 36 that would allow us to. Okay, you tell what it is you want to do, not why, because it's not debatable. And an immediate vote will be put. The request for information would be the second thing I saw in your transcripts that you abused. Now, this doesn't mean giving information. This means asking for information. And it has to be real, factual information. You don't get to say, now would it be true, and do a lawyer thing, okay, and get a whole speech in your question. Your question is, was the figure 5,000 or 50,000? The chair will call on whoever has to answer it, who has the best information. The figure was 50,000. Thank you. That's a good request for information. It's under number 10 because it's not going to be used very much unless you really need a piece of information. And I'd advise you first to ask your delegation chief because she or he probably already knows the answer. And you don't have to interrupt the assembly's proceeding to do that. So are you asking a factual question, not giving information to the assembly? The next one, which would be number 3 on the top 10 list, was parliamentary inquiry. This is nothing more than a question about parliamentary procedure. Bishop, would it be in order at this time to move a substitute for this matter? Yes, it would. Thank you, I'd like to, and then you go ahead and move your motion. Or, no, it would not be in order, and so you go back and sit down. Or you try to move it anyway, and then he rules you out of order, then you appeal, and the assembly tells you to sit down. Okay, that's how it works. Okay? This is also a number 10, because if you need parliamentary information, I got a tip for you. You see over there where food service is? A lot of you are going to be eating lunch over there every day. I don't intend between the morning and afternoon meetings to go and hide. I intend to go over there and get something to eat and come out here and sit down. I would be more than happy to sit and talk with anybody about parliamentary issues. If you are thinking you want to do something, come and see me. I will help you to do it right. My job's not to tell you can't do it. My job is to help you do it right. So you say, I want to table this motion because I'm against it. Well, you can't do that, but you could postpone it indefinitely. I want to get this over to the next conference. Well, you can't postpone it, but you could refer it to the Council of Bishops, let's say, and ask them to report. I'm not advising you to do any of these things. I'm trying to tell you how you can do it. Now, if you need to find me and you cannot find me, I'm probably in the conference secretary's office over there, on that side of the building in the locker room over there. And, you know, you can call, I don't know, the secretary, whatever, and get me, but I'll be around. Now, let me get to the end of this. Reconsider. You like to do that too. Now, first of all, you can only move to reconsider something if you voted on the majority side, whichever it was. If it was passed, you had to vote for it. If it was lost, you had to vote against it. Because you got to show that at least one person has changed their mind. So the chair's going to ask, did you vote on the prevailing side if you don't say so? And if you say no, then you can't move the motion. It'll take a second, and the seconder doesn't have to have voted any particular way. So its purpose is to permit hasty and ill-advised action, and it can be moved only by a member who voted on the prevailing side. Can only be made once. If you've reconsidered an item once, it cannot be reconsidered again. But here's an interesting one. Under your rules, that once can happen any time during General Conference. But only once. So, a couple of important issues. Interrupting a speaker or business. Now, this is going to repeat what I said a little while ago. With consideration to delegates who do not speak English and need interpretation, you need to speak slowly. Now, I am not naturally a slow speaker. And I've done a lot of conventions. And the interpreters have said to me, Len, we cannot follow you. You have to slow down. I tell them, how do I slow down? Can you tell me? They gave me an answer. Speak a sentence, pause, take a breath, and count to 3 in your head. Not out loud. People will wonder about you if you do it out loud. Pause, take a breath. So let me do that. Let me demonstrate. I'm going to read this script up here. Let me put the rest of it up. With consideration to delegates who do not speak English and need interpretation, please speak slowly when addressing the assembly. You see what I'm doing? I can say the sentence fast, but I got to stop and let the interpreters catch up. If you don't do that, the chair's going to kindly interrupt and ask you to slow down. So you should, with your friends, practice this over dinner tonight. Try saying a few sentences, pause, and count to 3. We will not think you are nuts for doing so. Believe me. Okay? And it's just really important that whatever language you're speaking, everybody else is hearing you in some other language, probably. So this doesn't only apply to English speakers. Okay, next to last slide. This is the last page of that today's legislative book, your Daily Christian Advocate. You'll see this list of 8 things. If I were you, I would make a copy of that, or I'd tear it out of the book and I'd leave it on the table right in front of me and just have it there all the time. Because now, in a minute, they're going to demonstrate to you the voting devices. And these 8 numbers are in there, and the system knows them. And if you push the wrong number, you're going to get in the wrong queue and get called on for the wrong thing. That's on page 278 of today's Daily Christian Advocate. Number 10 includes the request for information, parliamentary inquiry. This is number 8, number 8 includes these. Reconsider, adjourn, table motion, postpone to a certain time, and postpone indefinitely. The least likely motions to get made in the assembly. Doesn't mean you can't make them. You just have to pick number 8 and explain to the chair what it is that you want to do. I'm looking forward to these next 3 days with you. I am not just the parliamentarian for the chair. I'm your parliamentarian, and I'm here to help you. And all you got to do is be in touch with me, and I'll do the best job I can in helping you do what it is you need done. I want to thank Gary and the Council of Bishops and the conference for allowing me to be here with you. Thank you.
Evidently, I will be scheduling appointments for Dr. Young if you would like to make those. You can schedule those through your heads of delegation. I'm sorry I can't change the forms to include your new title. But I did hear a phrase that I haven't heard that often from folks outside our office circle that perhaps you might want to reflect on. I've read your transcripts. Not just 1 year, 2. I've read your transcripts. And we even got references in for our brothers and sisters who are Concordat churches with us, especially from the Methodist Church in Great Britain. We got Parliament and the Queen in the opening session. Excellent work. So now that we have heard about parliamentary procedure, we will talk about how we actually will use it in using the voting and speaker recognition devices. One of the items that we heard in your evaluations from 2016 had to do with the systems themselves, and so we have been out looking, and Sarah Hotchkiss, our business manager, has done a great job locating Lumi Technologies. And Simon Bryan from Lumi is going to come and talk to us about the use of our speaker recognition system and our voting devices.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Gary. So I'm going to take you through the voting and speaker recognition system. The technology, the system you're going to use is going to cover both the voting and the speaker recognition. It's going to allow you to put yourself in a different speaker pool, which reflects the 8 items that Len just talked about. The system actually consists of 2 pieces. There is a smart card and a keypad. Now the keypads you will find on your table. The smart cards are actually individualized to yourself. So what you need to do is you need to insert the smart card into the keypad. So you put it chip facing you and slot it into the keypad. Okay. Now, I understand not all of you, I think there's a handful of you that haven't yet received cards, particularly those that had some late changes. So they will be available first thing in the morning for you to pick up, and they'll be available at the back there in pre-conference room A. So for the purposes of this demonstration, you'll have to look over your neighbour's shoulder. Okay. So once your card inserted, it's important that once you come onto the floor, keep your card inserted. If you were to leave the floor, leave your keypad on the table, but take your card with you. There's also, if you want your a reserve to take over from you, there is a procedure that we will carry out in pre-conference A where you will return your card and the reserve will be given their card so that they can carry on voting and joining the speaker pools. Okay. You'll also see that there's a green button on the keypad. If you press that, it's a green menu button. If you press that, you'll actually be able to access different languages. So if English isn't your first language, hopefully that should help you. So we'll step through the different times we're going to use the system. So on the next slide, this sort of demonstrates how we're going to use the system tomorrow in the legislative sessions, whereas we're going to be ranking the petitions and plans, and we're going to do this by giving something a high priority or a low priority. And the way we do that is just by pressing 1 to give it a high priority and 2 to give it a low priority. And we'll do that when the presider asks us to vote on that matter, to rank that matter. So we'll take each item one at a time. So we're going to have a practice on on this ranking procedure now. So as you'll see on the screen, and when the item that we're ranking will appear on screen, and then the presider will say, "Please vote now." And at that moment, you'll see a clock starts counting down. You'll see on your device that you can press 1 for high priority, 2 for low priority. So at this moment we're going to prioritise whether we should listen to some blues music whilst we're in St. Louis. One of the good things to do here. And we'll perhaps prioritise something else and we'll see what we prefer to do. So listen to some blues music in St. Louis. Should that be high priority or low priority? 1 or 2? We capture those responses, and then when we want to, we can actually display those on screen. We can show percentages, we can show real numbers of votes as well. So it looks like a lot of you like blues music. So we'll do one more, just a little practice. So this time, what about visiting the Arch whilst in St. Louis? Should we give that a high priority or low priority? And we'll vote on that. So we'll press 1 or 2. 1 for high, 2 for low. And we'll see if... I can recommend both, by the way. I did visit the Arch, and I have had some listen to some blues music here as well, and highly recommend both. But we'll see which one comes out higher on this occasion. I mean, there's many more things to do, of course. We could have some barbecue, for example. We can go in for a run along the river. And there we go. Okay, well, the Arch wins, so get some good sightseeing in. Okay, so the next time we'll use the system. Another kind of way we'll use it is multiple choice. So particularly for the presider elections tomorrow, we'll be asked to vote on different options. So in this instance, all you need to do is press the number that corresponds to the answer you wish to give. If you would like to change your mind, you just press the new number, and you must do that within the 30-second countdown. So we'll have a practice of that procedure. So we'll put up a question. So, my favourite ice cream, and you'll vote 1 for chocolate, 2 for strawberry, 3 for vanilla, 4 for other, and surely no one will press number 5. I don't like ice cream. So we'll vote on that. So as I say, you'll press, in this occasion, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Change your mind, press the new number in the allotted time. And we'll receive those votes, and then we can display them on screen. So change your mind as much as you like during the period. And the tension will mount, and soon we'll know the floor's favourite ice cream flavour. Oh, that's close. I think it was inevitable that chocolate was going to win, but there we go. Okay, we'll move on to the next type of voting, which of course is on the motions and amendments when we'll be voting on business. So on this occasion, we'll be voting yes or no on a given motions and amendments. So we'll put up an amendment, and we can vote on whether today is a great day. So on this occasion, we're going to press 1 for yes, and we're going to press 2 for no. So 1 if we're in favour, 2 if we're against. So 1 for yes, 2 for no. And again, you can change your mind as much as you like. Just press the new button. If you'd like to withdraw your vote completely on a motion and amendment question, you can actually press the X button, and that will withdraw your vote completely. So we'll all vote 1 or 2. And then we'll see we'll see what kind of mood we're in. So the polls are closed, and we see that it is indeed a great day. We'll have to find out, those that voted no, we have to find out why. Maybe it had some problem travelling or something. But, so I believe we've got a second test. We can, hopefully everyone was comfortable with that. But what about this? The St. Louis weather is refreshing. Maybe so. We'll vote on that. 1 for yes, 2 for no. That might be being polite. I guess it depends where you come from and what you're comparing it to. I'm actually, despite the accent, I'm actually based in Minneapolis, and it's positively tropical here in St. Louis, I can tell you. So So we'll vote on this. Now, what I will say, during the course of the next few days, myself and my colleagues will always be at the back of the room, so you'll see at the technical area at the back. If you have any queries, please come to the back there, and we can help you. Okay? And now we'll see how we find the weather in St. Louis. So, yeah, very good, very good. Again, probably depends where you're from. Now, I'll just quickly now look at the speaker recognition system on the next slide. So we'll actually be using the same technology to join different speaker pools. Now, as Len mentioned, those speaker pools will have different numbers. Okay, so when the speaker pools are open, you'll actually press the microphone button. You'll see there's a small microphone button on the left side of your keypad. You'll actually join that, you'll press that microphone button, and then you'll be asked to choose which speaker pool you would like to join. And we'll put them, in a moment, we'll put those back on the screen, but they are the 1 through 8 that Len talked about. So you'll press the microphone button, and then you can actually just press the number that corresponds to the pool you wish to join, or you can actually use the trackball in the middle. Now, it may be that you would like to remove yourself from a pool because maybe your question or query or point has already been made by someone else. So to remove yourself from a pool, you simply press the microphone button again. It will actually ask you to confirm, are you sure you want to leave? And you just hit yes. And you'll be out the pools. So I'm just going to turn on the pools right now, and you'll actually see that you can, if you wanted to, press the little microphone button. You're probably all pressing it now, which hopefully won't happen in the real thing, but you can all press the microphone button. You'll see that once you press that, you'll then be able to select a particular pool, either by pressing the respective number or using the trackball, and then you'll actually end up in the pools back here, and of course the presiders and all of us here can see who is in those pools. Okay.
It's very obvious to me that some of you did not listen very closely to Dr. Young. 28 points of order at the moment.
Very good. Okay, so I think at that point that concludes this brief demonstration. As I mentioned, we will be at the technical area at the back of the room, so feel free to pay us a visit if you have any queries, and we can get that taken care of for you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is, yes. It is an honor to introduce a familiar face to you. Dr. Susan Brumbaugh has been our coordinator of the calendar for several of the General Conference sessions, and will be continuing in this session. Susan is going to come and speak to us about some of our processes.
So I'm Susan Brumbaugh, coordinator of the calendar and a member of the New Mexico Annual Conference delegation. Had to mention that. I want to share with you some information about what might happen after the Legislative Committee does its work. As the Commission on the General Conference planned this event, they needed to figure out how to work within our existing rules from 2016. Because we are operating under a shorter timeline, they looked at rules related to timing of when items passed by the Legislative Committee can be presented for consideration by the plenary, the General Conference. One rule, 40.3, specifies that items must be published at least 1 day before being presented. To meet the requirements of this rule, the Legislative Committee, that's you, will need to complete all its work by Monday afternoon so that the results can be published by 11:59 p.m. that same day. This will allow you to work on these items that the Legislative Committee supported as a plenary body on Tuesday. So they're published Monday night. You can work on them Tuesday. You might also be wondering what we're going to do about consent calendars. Under Rule 33, consent calendars require publication 24 hours prior to consideration. To meet the requirements of this rule, the Commission decided that no items will go to a consent calendar. Therefore, every item passed by the Legislative Committee will be presented for consideration and discussion by the plenary. So, in summary, the Legislative Committee needs to take action on all items assigned to it by Monday afternoon, and there will be no consent calendars. Thank you.
Our business manager is Sarah Hotchkiss. Sarah is going to come and talk to us about some of our practical matters and some things to be reminded of and things that perhaps have changed along the way.
Hi, my name is Sarah Hotchkiss. It is a joy and privilege to serve as the business manager of the General Conference. I'm going to go through a few logistical pieces with you tonight, or this afternoon. I'm not sure what time it is now. First, what I want to say, and I think that Gary would agree with me, thank you for all the kind words, prayers throughout our preparation as we continue our work and as we continue to do our work. So there's a big reminder for tomorrow morning. Worship begins at 7:30 a.m. Okay, I'm going to say it one more time. Worship begins at 7:30 a.m. For those of you who are seated on the floor and those who are here on the platform, when it comes to lunchtime, we only have an hour. So we recommend that you go over to the annex, which is to my right, and it says food service over there. They will have lunch served every day. I know some of you saw today that we have tables to the side that you're able to sit at and not have to eat in your workspace. And if you'd like to sit with others or your delegations, you're welcome to. We gave you some additional space to be able to have that. And they are prepared in the annex for the 1 hour lunch. Now, as you can tell, we're not in a normal convention center with meeting space galore. So we have made arrangements each night for the concourse seating area, which is where the floor is here and the concourse seating up there. We have made arrangements that it will be open from 6:30 to 7:30 every night. If you want to meet as a delegation, or if you want to meet in some different groups, you are welcome to do that from 6:30 to 7:30. You will see 2 new items on your tables. There's actually one for each of you. Can everybody find the checkered flag? Good. All right. So, if you are having technical difficulties with your devices or something's not working, please use the flag. That will help us with the pages and marshals, let them know something is going on. Now, this does not mean that you need to raise your flag to get the presiding officer. That's not the purpose of the flags. However, if there are technical difficulties going on, and multiple folks are having problems, those will give us an idea of what's going on in the room so that we may pause and see what we can do in the situation. All right, the next item on your table, are you ready? You have a fan on your table. All right, I haven't seen some of you using it as a fan. This will be used in the case that we have technology failure. We have to have a backup. So it doesn't mean that you use it instead. It just means you use it if the presiding officer, okay, I just saw somebody use it to hit their neighbor, so please don't do that. That was this table right here. I saw you.
That actually is a referral to the Committee on Ethics.
So the presiding officer will let you know if there's a time when those will need to be used. Now, I do have to be a little bit of a mean business manager in thinking about the money. So please don't take your flags and your fans home at night. And at the end of the conference, please don't take them home with you. There's another conference in, how many months, Gary?
I don't know, it feels like about 2 weeks away.
So I would ask if they work well that we could reuse them next time. So if you could be so kind to leave them on your tables when we end so that we can have them for 2020. So my presentation's short, so thank you everybody, and I appreciate working with all of you. Thank you.
As Sarah is making her way back to her seat, I do want to emphasize the extraordinary work that has been going on with her office. She is the business manager, and we have Raquel Perez-Malloy, who is the assistant business manager. We are the 3 staff members who are charged with pulling all of this together in conjunction with the Commission on General Conference, all of the volunteer work that is going on behind the scenes, and all of those folks who are working with us, especially in the production area, those who you may not see, but without them, you would not be seen. So we do want to remember them and thank them for all of their work through United Methodist Communications. We hope you have found this time to be informative, to be helpful. If there are questions that we have not addressed, please feel free to visit us in Locker Room A. I can't believe that we can actually say that our offices are in Locker Room A. But we are, and it is located out in Pre-Function B. You will find us just to the left if you are exiting the hall, and head over in that direction, and our office staff will be available to you to assist in any way possible. Would you please join with me in a word of prayer as we are ready to make our way out? Loving God, for a wonderful day of energizing and comforting worship, for the love that fills our hearts, for the grace with which we will operate with one another, we give you thanks. Lead us, guide us wherever we may go. For it's in your name we pray. Amen. And now, as a secretary always does, there are announcements before we leave. We do want to let you know that because of the Judicial Council decision, which was released yesterday, and if you have not made notice of that, you can do so through United Methodist News Service. The Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters will be meeting tomorrow evening. The Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters will meet tomorrow evening at the conclusion of the afternoon session. The meeting will be held in rooms 142 through 143. It is located off of the A pre-function area between pre-function A and B. Please check your email tonight for late information that will be important for your meeting. Thank you, and we will see you tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. for a time of worship. Good night.